Hello, boxing fans around the world. Thank you once again for joining us on Talking Fight for another episode featuring Christian from the Friday night panel, who's going to talk to us about the Olympics and in particular boxing at the Olympics. What have you found out today, Christian?
Well, other than you and I have the same stylist, it turns out, the red and white look today. Or I'm wondering if you just threw that on for Carl and Big T. I'm not sure. Are you pandering? Is that what that shirt is? Are we pandering now?
It has more. Anyway, go ahead.
Sorry?
Go ahead. I was going to say it has more to do with that. Never mind.
Well, I mean, at least you come by it honestly. At least you come by the shirt honestly. I wish I had good news for you today, Graham. Today's a bit of a doom and gloom kind of day, though, in the headlines.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big headlines, if you try to Google Olympic boxing right now, all you'll do is you'll just get bombarded with stories about the fact that Clarissa Shields has decided that she's going to go try her hand at MMA for a bit. Doesn't have a whole lot to do with boxing and more to do with a paycheck because she's more likely to make more money on that side of things. Unfortunately, takes a talented boxer away from us. But outside of that, there are some updates on a couple of stories that I promised that I would bring you updates on as we kept moving along. And unfortunately, our friends in India have been hit yet again. This seemingly never-ending string of woes for this Olympic team. So in a blow to India's women's boxers' preparedness for the Tokyo Olympics, their scheduled training competition trip to Serbia was called off yesterday evening when as many as 21 female fighters and coaching staff members, including high-performance director Rafael Bergamascaro, real Indian name there, Bergamasco, there it is, Rafael Bergamasco, and the chief national coach Ali Kamar tested positive for COVID-19 infection and were subsequently shifted into a quarantine zone. So a 10-member women's boxing contingent, that's excluding Tokyo Games ticket holder MC Mary Kom, was planned to fly to Serbia today for an Olympic exposure trip, but that has now been canceled after so many positive cases at the national camp for elite women fighters. Now, this obviously is mirroring what we were talking about last week. We had hit the men's side of the camp, the training camp as well. The traveling party did consist of 4 other Olympic-bound boxers: Simranjit Kaur in the 60-kilogram category, Lavlina Bogorin in the 69-kilogram category, Pooja Rani in the 75-kilogram category, among others. So earlier there were talks about sending them as well to an invitational tournament in Prague in the Czech Republic, but that trip was also called off as a result of this. In the latest development, the Sports Authority of India yesterday evening informed that there were precautionary tests conducted at the Indira Gandhi International Facility, and 21 national campers, including players and coaches and coaching staff, were found to be COVID infected. In fact, the entire assistant coaching staff has tested positive now for COVID. However, I guess, I don't know if you could call this a positive note, but on a slightly positive note, none of the infected boxers at this point in time are the Olympic-bound boxers. Those are currently holding a ticket to Japan so far. So for those who have tested negative, they've been removed from the facility where they were training and are currently being quarantined on their own at the JL Nehru Stadium in New Delhi. So a Sports Authority of India statement read that sparring sessions and contact training have also been stopped for now. So, well, it's good news that, the actual fighters who are holding Olympic tickets so far have not contracted the virus itself. It does greatly hamper their ability to prepare, not just because this trip from Serbia has been canceled on them, but also, they've just taken sparring away from those athletes who have tested negative. They've taken sparring training away from these people. So now they're down to pad work and, training on the streets like everyone else is right now, which, isn't going to do them any favors as they're in the actual run up to the games themselves. So now that the men's side has already caught it, now the women's side has it. So hopefully, this is them getting this all out of the way nice and early, and then we see a nice healthy contingent heading into Tokyo. But I can't help but feel that a lot of this is coming from things like the decision to re-implement group dining at the training camps between different factions and different bubbles. So it's kind of, again, sad but predictable. And I've said that before. These results are sad but predictable. And all the best to everyone who is infected. Hopefully everybody stays asymptomatic at least, which I believe is the case at this point in time for the affected women boxers. So nobody has been hospitalized as of yet. But fingers crossed, we wish everyone a speedy recovery. But moving on in our doom and gloom parade for the day, Graham, again, 2 officials in Japan's ruling LDP party today said changes could be coming to the Tokyo Olympics. One of them suggested that the Olympics themselves could still be canceled, and the other said that even if they do proceed, it may be without any fans whatsoever. So Toshihiro Nikai, the number 2 and Secretary General of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, mentioned that the cancellation mentioned the possibility of the cancellation only a day after Tokyo reached the 100-day to go mark yesterday. He made his comments on a TV show recorded by Japan's TBS TV. So Nikai said, if it seems impossible to go on with the games, they must definitely be canceled. If there is a surge in infections because of the Olympics, there will be no meaning to having the Olympics. Asked if a cancellation was still an option, Nikai said, of course. But he did add, it's important for Japan to have a successful Olympics. It's a big opportunity, and I want to make it a success. We will have many issues and resolve and prepare, but it's important to take care of each one of them one by one. Prime Minister Toshihide Suga said in a statement that there was no change to the government position to do everything to achieve a safe and secure Olympics. That's at this time, of course. Tokyo organizers have said that they, the IOC, and the International Paralympic Committee are still fully focused on hosting the games this summer. They said Suga has repeatedly expressed the government's commitment to holding the Olympics. Now, this is in the phase of COVID-19 cases have been rising in Japan. Just on Thursday, which is today, but obviously, we're 12 or so hours behind at the moment, Japan's second largest metropolitan area of Osaka recorded a little over 1,200 new cases. And this is the third straight day in a row where their cases have surpassed 1,000. Tokyo itself hit another 729 cases, its highest total in more than 2 months. And Japan has so far attributed about 9,500 deaths to COVID-19. Now, this is good, of course, by world standards, but poor by results in Asia and neighboring communities. Tokyo and Osaka have been under high alert status since, I believe it was the 3rd of April, but officials are concerned that there's little sense of urgency. Experts on the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Task Force have warned that a new variant could replace the conventional virus and trigger explosive infections by early May. Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike urged residents to take maximum protection and precaution and asked for non-Tokyo residents not to visit the city. Taro Kono, the government minister in charge of Japan's vaccine rollout, said that even if the Olympics go on, there may be no fans of any kind in the venues. He said that it's likely that the Olympics will have to be held in empty venues, particularly as cases surge across the country. Now, that is going to mean only television cameras and still cameras. That's going to be the only thing around to record the action. So we might see a bit of a hit in the broadcast quality that we're used to at these tournaments as well. That will, of course, be joined by some reporters, judges, and match officials, but that's going to be about it. The delayed Tokyo Olympics, as we all know, are set to begin July 23rd, and the Paralympics are going to follow on the 24th of August. Fans from abroad, as we know and as we've reported here before, have already been barred from attending the games. Now even Japanese spectators could be kept away. So Kono said earlier today on a television talk show, I think the question is how to do the Olympics in a way that is possible in this situation. And that may mean that there will probably be no spectators. Now, Kono did not suggest that the Olympics would not go ahead, but said that they could only be held under, quote unquote, certain conditions, saying that the way that these Olympics will be held will be very different to ones that we have seen in the past. Tokyo organizers have said that they expect to announce a decision on this later on this month as to how many fans are going to be allowed at each individual venue. So once again, Graham, we find ourselves in the position where the existence of the games themselves have been called into question at top levels of the Japanese government. So again, all doom and gloom on us today, buddy. We're hoping, obviously, that the games are going to go ahead, and even without spectators, it's still important to maintain that tradition. It's important for the exposure for our athletes. And actually, and as I'm saying this, Carl from our friends over at Last Bell Boxing Chat is saying it begs the question: should it go ahead without fans? And I would argue that absolutely yes, it should go ahead without fans, because we're still watching, we're still fans, we're still here, we're still watching from home. The vast majority of people who do view the Olympics don't have the coin or the time to actually travel to Japan, even in a normal setting, to travel to Japan, to the hotel stay, the airfare, the tickets themselves, and sustaining yourself over a couple of weeks. So most of us were going to watch it from home anyway. We are going to see broadcast values drop as we have less broadcast staff. So you may not get all the same camera angles and all the same replays in the same time that you might be used to. But I think I think a lot of us are going to be watching from home anyway, and I think the exposure is still just so important for our athletes. Amateur athletes who maybe one day they're hoping to go pro, or maybe they're just looking for that Olympic gold. All these athletes are on a clock. This only happens every 4 years, and most athletes are only going to get 2, maybe 3 Olympics at the top of their game. So canceling even a single Olympics can make a huge impact on the career of an athlete, especially those athletes who are coming from less developed parts of the world, where this is going to be their major chance to be put into a spotlight. My 2 cents on that.
Took the words out of my mouth. I mean, the only reason we're here is because of COVID, quite frankly. And we're broadcasting around the world, and we've got fans around the world. So I'm sure Olympic athletes feel the same way. I'm sure they're not doing it for the few thousand people in the stadiums, but in fact, depends how you look at it. But realistically, I mean, there's all sorts of professional teams playing without fans in the stadiums across North America. And of course, if Tokyo does back out, there's always Orlando. I mean, they have said they'll gladly take these games.
I think we might be a little close, and there's a few too many moving parts at this point in time, even just to consider the visa applications for athletes coming from around the world getting into the U.S., let alone the fact that Florida itself is just a petri dish for COVID at the moment. So I don't see them taking up Orlando's offer on that one, but,
No, I know.
Stranger things have happened.
Will be interesting when it comes to the Olympics. I don't think there's going to be any fans there, but I wonder if they're going to pipe in fan noise like they do at the
was actually just about to ask you that question. I was about to ask you that exact same question. And do you think they're going to pump in the fan noise? Because I was watching. What was I watching the other day? Something. I think it was a Champions League match at the time, and you hear the crowd going wild, and you don't think anything of it. You're just watching, going, yeah. Wait a second. You start looking at it's completely empty stadium. We've seen the same thing in NHL games. Fans losing their minds, only there's nobody there.
Right.
Now I'm wondering, are they doing that though just for our benefit, viewing from home, or is that going over the loudspeakers in the actual arenas and stadiums? Like on the ice, on the pitch, are the actual athletes hearing this? Is why I'm just popped into my head now. This question: are they hearing that, or is that just in post production? Is that just coming to us via TV magic?
You know what? As Mike and I often discuss, one of the good things about not having fans at a boxing match right now is you can actually hear the smack of leather. You can hear the coaches yelling and screaming, and that's kind of fun for a fan to listen to that kind of stuff, not just the excitement.
It is. Sometimes you'd hope that the coach's instruction to be better than punch harder and things, but you do. You hear that when we have been hearing that in some of these matches that we've been watching. Just you would expect more. Watch for the left hook, or you're dropping your gun. No, just punch harder, punch more. You're hearing.
Only for fans.
Oh, there we go. So our friends in the UK have just popped in, and Premier League, they are not pumping that into the stadiums, only on the TVs. So quiet for the athletes themselves. I'm not sure what they're going to be doing come the actual Olympics. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But you know what? If you're watching the Olympics days gone by on TV, for example, and if let's say you're watching track and field, there are so many different events going on simultaneously within that stadium. It's not like all 60,000 or 100,000 fans are screaming for that one pole vaulter, they're watching separate events as they occur on the field. So,
well, the track events are a bit of a different animal for that exact reason. You know, you've got that big stadium, you've got obviously the track going around the stadium, and then you have all these events happening in the middle of that, where you might have pole vaulting over on this side going on the same time as standing long jump on this side, or something like that. And it really depends on where your seats are in the stadium, which events you actually get to get a good view of. But I mean, something like the boxing events, they're not running 4 or 5 rings in one giant auditorium where, you know, which fight am I going to watch at any given point in time. So it's a little bit different on our side of things.
They might. And it also, I wonder about, you know, swimmers. Swimmers don't compete because of the fan noise. Divers don't compete because of the fan noise. As a matter of fact, the stadium's pretty quiet when there's diving going on, just for example. So, you know.
Oh yeah, no, you'll get thrown out of Wimbledon for talking.
Correct. So, you know, did you really need the fans? Yes and no. I would answer. Yo, yes and no. So anyway, but you know what? The Japanese Olympic body were bragging, quite frankly, prior to all this, that they had sold the majority of their sponsorship rights to Japanese companies, and they were the highest grossing internal sponsorship sale ever for the Olympic events. So, you know, they've already sold the broadcast rights. They've already made their money. So the Japanese people kind of don't really need fans as in terms of generating money.
Well, that's good because they're not getting them from overseas. They've already decided that. It's just going to be a matter of, on the domestic level, how many of those tickets were snapped up in the domestic sales. And then once again, they're going to have to refund all that money as well. And then it's going to bring them into the same thing that's going on with everyone else in the world, going, well, are we also going to get our service fees refunded, or is this just going to be a matter of here's face value on your ticket?
True. Yep. All right. The debate rages. It's
well,
good to hear
another debate's about to start here, because Carl there says over in Britain says
yes.
that boxing matches and crowd noise is much louder in the UK than the US, according to fighters, he says. So he says British boxing fans are rowdier than American boxing fans. Now, having been to sporting events in both countries, both of us have together, we've been to sporting events in both countries. Soccer or football, again, depending on your preferred flavor. We've been to matches here in Toronto as well as in Scotland, you and I together. I think you've been to more than I have over there. And it doesn't really surprise me, because I've seen how much the Brits are drinking before going into these, before they enter these stadiums. But walking, you see, it's a different atmosphere, because from what I've seen of sporting events in the UK versus here, you show up, you go, you get a couple of pints, you go sit in your seat and you drink your pints, you're out, you go get a couple more, and then they cut you off partway through. Whereas events that we've been into in the UK, everyone goes out before the event, pre-games pretty hard, and then in events that we've been to, dry events, and then all of a sudden it's dry. So everyone's already had a few by the time they get to the stadium, I think is the big difference. And that might have something to do with the volume. And yes, of course, I will admit, Carl, that not everyone in the UK is an alcoholic. He wanted me to mention that.
Yes, so you should. All right.
And before and after, he says, and that's why they're not serving you drinks during the matches.
Yes. When I was at the football games in the UK, you had to drink underneath the stadium. You weren't allowed to drink in the stands. Tea. Right on. Okay, thanks very much, Christian. Appreciate that very comprehensive update on the Olympics, both from India and Japan. And thanks very much for the fans out there interacting with us. Fantastic. Again, you guys are always welcome to join us on this stream. So today's Thursday. So tomorrow being Friday, we'll see you twice, not only for the Olympic, but also the Friday night panel.
Sounds good. And I will continue to bring you guys updates, even if it is just doom and gloom. Hopefully we'll have some more fun stories, something lighthearted and uplifting coming soon. Assuming we get the games. Correct.
And we will. I'm positive. 5:20. Oh, you're starting late over there.
You're fine, right, Carl. The sun's past the yard arm. You're fine. Have a pint.
We'll allow it. All right. Thanks, Christian. Bye, Carl. Bye, Big T.